This is the Arlington County Board of Equalization hearing. All 5 board members are present, and there are 6 cases on the agenda. The first case is RPC 15086-037 at 3415 Washington Boulevard. I apologize for all the sirens in the background. I'm assuming they're going to pass. I'll mute. Mr. Radin, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about this property.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, when we originally had appealed this property, this is a newly constructed 270 unit mid-rise apartment. The main issue for us really was the committed affordable units. The county weren't providing for those units in their model. And we do appreciate the new revised version of the county model, which they have now accounted for the 20 committed affordable units. And so that's really no longer the focus of our case. And we do appreciate the work that the county has done on their revised model. But needless to say, we still feel that the rent being utilized by the county is a little bit more than appropriate, and in fact is overinflated based on the actual income potential of this property. So I'd like to start briefly. I'm going to use the county's or the board memo that has 64 pages. Does everyone have that one? It starts with the county's case first, and then has a total of 64 pages. Does everyone have that packet in front of them? Okay, fantastic. So if we could start on page 37, and this is the taxpayers' certified financial statement that they submitted for this year. And if you take a look here, if you go down to the bottom, the net operating income reported by the ownership is $6,695,628. I'd like you to just take note of that number. Now, the county did mention here that we had some non-routine expenses, and that's fine. We'll add to that 47,918.95, which is the amount of the non-ordinary, and so that comes to an NOI of $6,743,564. 546.95. Now that's the reported NOI. Now, the next number I'd like you to take note of is the county's model, and they have an NOI of $7,449,154. And just keep track of these numbers. Now, the taxpayers' requested NOI is $7,117,539. Okay, that's the taxpayers requested. Now let's go through and see how we got to that, because the taxpayer model is a more realistic view of the fair market value. As of the date of valuation, it's based on actual income from the rent roll, market data, and it's not overinflated. So let me go ahead and show you where these numbers came from. If you could go to our income approach, which is on page 32 of, page 32 of 64. And you will see here we have 2 different models, one for the affordable, one for the income market rate units. And this potential rental income, this came directly from the rent roll, the full market rent based on the rent roll. And we can see that based on, well, first of all, it's the full market rent, but we've also subtracted the affordable rent. And so the affordable rent is on page 30, of 64. So if you flip up a couple pages, you'll see the affordable rent roll and the total amount here of $392,520. Now that's subtracted from the full rent roll income, which is on page 43. So we went to the actual rent roll, and this is on page 43 of the packet. And if you go to the bottom, you'll see the annual amount, the full income that this property has the potential of generating is 9,390,816. And so we've plugged that into our model and our potential rent. We subtracted the amount for the affordable, which is on the separate valuation to the right. Now, after utilizing the actual rent roll here to provide our potential rental income, we've kept the county model for vacancy, expenses, cap rate, and arrived at our indicated value. Now, we use the county guidelines for our expenses. Now, we can see those on page 60 and 61 of the full packet. So if we all go to page 60 and then 61, let's go to page 60 first. You'll see here, this is the affordable guidelines for the county, and the mid-rise 4 to 8 stories, which is the subject, 2010 plus, that is 8,050 per unit, which we utilized here in our model, 8,050 per unit. And on the next page, you'll see we also have the market rate, and that's 10,139. And so we utilize that in our model. After utilizing the county guidelines and the full gross potential income that's capable from this property, we also included the full amount for other income that the ownership reported, which was $835,449. We kept every amount of additional income. We added that in, kept the full rent roll, utilized the county vacancy of 4% and 5% for the affordable units, used the county guidelines for expenses, and kept the county cap rate. Our indicated value, all totaled, is $127,789,400 based on this income approach. Now, I will say we did make another argument about the cost to construct this building. It was about $70 million. It was recently constructed, just completed in 2024. So our point here is that the actual cost of construction, there's a principle of substitution where somebody wouldn't pay a whole lot more than the cost to build a same property on a similar piece of land. And so when you look at the cost of 70 million, including all totaled, it's hard to say that the value then is 127 million if you could just go and build it for about 70 million. That being said, we're going to value this on an income approach like the county does. And looking at that, we feel our model is much more representative of the actual income this property is capable of generating based on the full gross potential income, the extra income, and keeping the county models for 4% vacancy, 5% for the affordable, the expenses as per the guidelines, and the overall cap rates that is indicated in the county guidelines as well. Again, the actual reported NOI for this property, is 6.7 million. The taxpayer requested is 7.1, but the county is well over that at 7.4 million. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Shuttlesworth for the county, please.
Yes, good morning, board. Good morning, Mr. Radin. So this is a newly constructed mid-rise apartment building with 270 units. Just as the appellant stated, 20 units are committed affordable. The amenities include 24-hour marketplace, fitness studio with boxing, spin bikes, yoga studio, co-working space, club room, and a library. This property is located less than half mile from the closest metro station, and the issues on appeal were potential rent, vacancies and concessions, and the cap rate. As the board can see, in columns F and F1, we separated the market units from the affordable units, and we used 2025 appropriate guidelines for each category. I would like to emphasize that the potential rent projections for the affordable units, which is column F1, is almost exactly the same as the actual rent reported by the appellants. There's about $1,100 difference there. And that's again on page 29 of the BOE packet. Moving on to potential rent projections for the market rate units, we did recognize the 2% excess vacancy and concessions. Our combined potential rent for the market units was calculated as follows. We utilized the potential rent provided to the department. We projected a 3.5% increase in those rents, 3.5% growth to the market rent units. And we also took off 2% excess for the vacancies and concessions. For the expenses, we projected 4% increase. So we actually projected higher increase for the OPEX than we projected an increase for the potential rent. And the appellants are imputing the OPEX per our guidelines. But in this particular case, that would imply that the OPEX are projected to increase by over 14%, which we believe is too high. Lastly, I just wanted to add that our proposed assessment translates to $494,710 per unit. There were not many similar age and similar quality comparables in this particular section of Arlington. The best relevant comp I could find was the Earl. It was built also in 2021. This property is currently assessed at $540,000 per unit. It is also mid-rise. It also has some affordable units. There were two other comps I provided in my packet. 10 at Clarendon, which is a little bit older than the subject property. That one was built in 2017, and it is currently assessed at $488,160 per unit. And then we have the Latitude, which one? This one is also older. That one was built in 2015, and that one is currently assessed at $476,260 per unit. And in respect to the cap rates, again, our cap rates are supported by the third quarter commercial real estate publications such as RERC, CBRE, PwC, and the multifamily sales that occurred in Arlington in 2024 produced the unloaded cap rate range from 4% to 5.8%. Thank you. I'm open for questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions from board members? Mr. Yates?
To the county, just a quick one. You projected a 3.5% increase in rents. What was that based on?
That was our those rents were as of January 1. So we projected as the rents are renewing, as the leases are expiring, there is an increase in rents of 3.5%. And the same with the expenses. We did increase expenses by 4%.
But you saw from the rents that were renewing a 3.5% increase is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions? No? Oh, Mr. Hoffman.
Wasn't there a sale at 3275 Washington Boulevard?
Which one?
3275, the Fitzroy. Lexan Fitzroy.
I will have to look it up. I'm not sure. What was the name of the property? What is the trade name?
It's called like a Lexan Fitzroy. It's literally one block over. If you go past the townhouses to the east, it's the next multifamily building.
I'll have to go back. That sale was not brought up by the appellant as comparable, so I did not.
All right, it closed in December, so.
Okay.
I'm just looking at that one. I didn't know if Sean, do you have any insight on that?
No,
sale?
Actually, I wasn't looking at the comparables.
Okay, it was $592,900 per unit, but it's concrete construction. So I just didn't know if you guys had any kind of comment on the differences, because that's about 120% on a raw per unit basis.
Yeah, no,
of
unfortunately,
the assessment.
I can
I'm not
actually,
familiar.
Chris was kind enough to pull that information for me. So yes, that was the sale settled in December 2024 for $158,300,000, and that was $592,000 per unit. Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
But I will say though, I have no idea how much NOI that property is generating. Must be a lot more. Anyways.
Gotcha.
Okay, any final questions? No? Okay, Ms. Shuttlesworth, if you take a minute to wrap up then.
Yeah,
Sure, thank you so much. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Did
okay.
you-
Shuttlesworth?
Yes. So this is the newly constructed Class A apartment building located within walking distance from the metro. Based on the rent roll provided, the property was 94% occupied. We did factor in the 2% excess vacancy and collection. And 3 comparables that I did provide, they do support the 2025 assessment. And the appellant's proposed assessment of $473,000 per unit is more in line with the assessment of those older properties. And so I asked the board to confirm the 2025 assessment of $133,571,600. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Radin, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
Thank you so much. So again, I think what the taxpayer here and what we're trying to convey is what's more reasonable, looking at the full gross potential rent roll and determining how much income this property can generate, looking at the county model for expenses, vacancy, cap rate, and then coming up with an income value based on that. And I think the taxpayer's model comes out to an NOI of $7,117,539. The actual reported NOI is $6,743,546. And the county's model of 7.4 million is over 705,000 above the actual income. So our model comes in just 373 above that. And I think that's a very reasonable number, looking at the actual performance and the county guidelines to develop that income approach. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you both. All right, it's just among the board. Where are folks? Mr. Penaranda?
Yeah, I'm okay with the revised assessment, and I would suggest that we reduce the assessment to the revised numbers. I mean, I checked all the rates of the units that are rented. I mean, the calculations that the assessor did using the rates compared to the rent roll that they provided, and I see that it's pretty reasonable. I think the main difference here is the expenses that they are indicating. I think they're overstated, in my opinion, compared to what it's been in the past year and what they provided for 2024. So I'm okay with the revised assessment the way it is.
Okay. All right, Mr. Hoffman, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I think the appellant's number is pretty fair. It's kind of a bump from last year. I get that on the market rate apartments. I kind of tend to trust them more on the actual performance of the committed affordable units, just because those have their own headaches with them, and a lot of times you get turnover issues, you get vacancy issues just because qualification, and you get a lot of downtime in those units. So I'm kind of leaning towards just making the adjustment on the affordable column with the NOI. So it would be a little bit of a reduction to NOI. I just need a second to do that math. But that's kind of what I'm thinking right now.
All right, let's hear from some other folks while you're doing that. Mr. Yates, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was okay with the county's revision and comparing some of the other numbers, but also where the property was in 24, you take, less than 17% vacancy. I think the county did a good projection there.
Yeah, I agree with you. With what both you and Mr. Panorama said, I think it's, just the additional expenses that the appellant is using that the property didn't have in 2024. So I'm okay with the revised. Mr. Mendez, where are you?
Yeah, I would agree with what Mark said. I think the what was it, 17% vacancy or 14% vacancy is is what is bringing their number down in column E. But with that said, I second what was said. I would stick with the revised assessment.
Okay. All right, Mr. Huffman, I don't think you have votes to go your way. So I'm ready for a motion from someone.
I'll motion to accept the county's revised number of 133,571,600.
Okay, and do I have a second?
Second that.
Mr. Penneron, a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, it's 4-1 without Mr. Hoffman. The county's revised number of 133,571,600 has been confirmed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have Mr. McCraw? Yeah, we do, and Mr. Bynes. Okay. And then on this case, Mr. Hoffman has a conflict, so he will be sitting this case out. Pulling up the next is RPC 140511016 at 4350 Fairfax Drive. Ms. McCraw, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about this property.
Thank you very much and good morning. So I'd like to just point the board to beginning on page 27 of 251 of the BOE hearing memo. This is kind of the beginning of our analysis here. The subject property is 197,199 square foot Class A office building. It's located in the Ballston submarket of Arlington, and it was built in 1989. It's located at 4350 Fairfax Drive, and it's known as the Ellipse at Ballston. Most importantly for this property is that it's sold in an arm's length, widely marketed transaction that closed on April 1st, 2025. It's sold for $20,200,000, which equates to about 102 per square foot, which does represent our requested tax year 2025 value. What sets this case apart from kind of many of the other properties with recent sales that have been discussed in prior hearings here is the timing of the sale and how it relates to the fair market value of the property as of the date of value of 1/1/25. Beginning on page 28 of our submission here, we just have a brief summary of the details here and kind of describing how this sale relates to the value as of the date of value. The ultimate purchaser of the subject property first engaged in 2 rounds of bidding in June and July of 2024, well in advance of the date of value. Beginning on pages 30 and continuing to page 35, we do have kind of excerpts validating this timeline, calling for bids to be submitted by June 26th and July 31st of 2024, respectively. After these 2 rounds of initial bidding in the summer of 2024, the purchaser ultimately signed a letter of intent, which does begin on pages 36 and 37 on September 11th, 2024, indicating their intention to purchase the property. As clearly stated in this LOI on page 36, the purchase price of $20,200,000 is described, and the ultimate closing date on page 37 of December 20th, 2024 is outlined. Now, this purchaser was intending to close on this December of 2024 date, but an incident at the property did push back this closing, which is why the timing of the sale kind of comes into question. Unfortunately, in the few weeks after signing this letter of intent, on September 28th, 2024, there was a fire at the property. The generator caught fire on page 38. Beginning on page 38 and continues for the next few pages, we do have incident reports from the Arlington County Fire Department that details this incident. This incident kind of created a twofold problem for the ultimate purchaser here. First, this offer to purchase the property was made on the basis of the building having a functional generator. It was estimated that it would take about 40 to 60 weeks to install a new generator rather than a secondhand generator. So the timeline was extended because of that. Secondly, which complicated matters further, even though there was a temporary generator in place, the fire marshal only gave the previous owners about 3 months to install a new generator by December of 2024, which was functionally impossible based on the prior estimate of 40 to 60 weeks to install a new generator. So kind of due to this added complication, the added liability of not having a functional generator at the property on the original intended close date, the closing date was delayed to allow time for this problem to be cured. On page 54, there's a letter from the code enforcement inspector it was sent to prior ownership. It granted the property an extension of time to bring the property into compliance. So now they had until November 30th, 2025 to have a new generator installed. This kind of worked with the previous time frame of 40 to 60 weeks to have a new generator installed. So with this new letter received, the assurance that no negative action would be taken due to the temporary generator in place, the purchaser was more comfortable moving forward with the ultimate close of this property. Beginning on page 55, we do have the purchase and sale agreement that is dated as of February 10th, 2025. That details the purchase price of $20,200,000. This is the same price that was agreed upon in September of 2024. This purchase price can be found on page 64. And it also outlines the new closing date of April 1st, 2025 on page 70. So we have the same price that was agreed upon, negotiated in calendar year 2024 before the data value of 1/1/25. Because the new generator was able to be, the extension was granted, this closing date was extended until April 1st, 2025. Additionally, kind of further corroborating the value of the subject, the property was appraised by Avis & Young on March 14th, 2025 for $21,500,000. Excerpts from this appraisal begin on page 184 of the memo. The appraisal notes that they are concluded as is market value of $21.5 million is 6.4% above the reported purchase price. Therefore, the purchase price is considered to be in line with market. So to summarize, we do ask that the board enrolls this $20,200,000 purchase price as the best indicator of market value as of 1/1/25. This was a widely marketed arm's length. It was not a distressed transaction. There was no debt on the existing building at close. The sales price of $20.2 million meets the definition of fair market value in Virginia exactly. It was the price which it would bring when it's offered for sale by one who desires but is not obliged to sell it, and it's bought by one who is under no necessity of having it. Again, and explained in detail, this price of $20.2 million was negotiated, set, and agreed upon in calendar year 2024 prior to the 1/1/25 date of value. Signed LOI in September of 2024 outlines this $20.2 million purchase price. If not for the generator fire in September of 2024, the sale would have closed on December 20th, 2024 at this same purchase price. So we ask the board to consider this as the best indicator of fair market value. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bynes for the county, please.
Yes, good morning, board. Good morning, Ms. McCraw. Yes, so this property, we did go out and inspect the property here on October 2nd of this year. As the appellant stated, there was a sale in April 1, 2025 that was finalized for $20,200,000 this year. However, there was actually stated there was a letter of intent for the purchase of the property entered into on September 11th, 2024, and it was expected to be finalized before the end of 2024. However, letters of intent are not binding agreements for a sale. The last page of this letter of intent emphasized, as I quote, "The above summary does not constitute a binding offer to purchase and is subject to change or withdrawal until such a time as a mutually acceptable purchase and sale agreement is fully executed by both parties." The appellant also stated that in their appeal packet that a sale was made on the basis of having a fully functional generator. And as I stated, on September 28th, the generator caught fire and needed to be fully replaced. And the timeline that it would take for the generator to be replaced caused the finalization of the sale to be postponed until April 1st of this year. So the purchaser did not feel comfortable at the time with going through the agreement until the extension by the fire marshal was put in place. Unfortunately, that pushed the sale into 2025 instead of 2024, which we will take into consideration for the 2026 valuation. Also, Ms. McCraw did provide us with 2024 income and expense and rent roll information for the property. And if we take a look at the summary sheet on page 3 of the BOE packet, we can compare our 2025 assessment in column D with the actual performance of the property in column E1. We can see that the office income in 2024 was higher than what we projected for the assessment of 2025. The EGI was higher than what we projected, and the NOI was higher than what we projected. As we can see, the county was actually conservative with this original assessment compared to the actuals of the 2024 IAD. Also, we take a look at the leases at the property. There were some leases that were, a couple of leases that were signed for some small spaces in the property in 2024. And there was only, I believe there's only one lease that is set to expire in 2025, which should not affect the income that is expected to be generated for the property in 2025. After reviewing all the documentation that was provided, we do recommend that a 2025 valuation be confirmed at $44,306,000. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Questions from board members? No? Okay, any final comments, Mr. Mines?
Yes, again, the sale for the property was finalized on April 1 of this year, well after the January 1 valuation date. The sale happened 3 months after the valuation date, and we will review and consider it during the 2026 evaluation period. Also, the property performed better in 2024 than it had the previous 2 years. It also performed better than our 2025 projections. Also, the 2025 valuation is almost 10% lower than the actual 2024 valuation. We did not encounter anything that indicates a revision of the 2025 is necessary and recommend that it be confirmed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. McCraw, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Not to beat a dead horse here, but the sale is the sale is the sale. The subject property didn't suddenly decrease in value from 1/1/25 to 4/1/25, the closing date, by 54%. In fact, we know and we have ample documentation that shows that the ultimate sales price of $20.2 million was brought to market in 2024 and agreed upon prior to the 1/1/25 date of value. The only complication here in this case is the generator fire, which ultimately you could even argue would lower the estimated value by the cost to cure this deficiency. Ultimately, the closing price of $20.2 million was the same price that was agreed upon in September of 2024. So we do ask the board to consider this and reduce the 2025 assessment to the sales price that was agreed upon in 2024. And if not for the generator fire, would have closed on December 20th, 2024, before the 1/1/25 date of value. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Okay, it's just among the board. Where are folks on this? Mr. Mendez?
Yeah, there's some cases we hear that they claim that there was a sale and we can't find much on it, and we try to, verify that it was actually a sale. But we have plenty of documentation here that I understand it was supposed to close in 2024. It did close on April 1st of 2025, so that is definitely outside of the window, but it's less than half the value of what the 2025 assessment is for. So I don't think we can ignore that. Like I said, there's plenty of documentation from 2024 showing that it was supposed to close then. I fooled around with some of the numbers and tried to just get it as low as possible using the county's method, and I capped out the actual reported income, and it came out at 34 million. So that's still almost double what it sold for. So with that said, I would be in favor of going to the sales price, even though it was a little bit out of the normal range we go back to.
Okay, I'm going to just be the devil's advocate because I can see the logic there. My concern is, okay, so we have this letter of intent from September, and yes, it could have closed by December 31st, and then we wouldn't have an issue here because we'd have a clean, nice sale, and it'd be great. But a couple things could have happened. I mean, with the fire, they could have backed out entirely. They could have done other improvements to the building where it was worth more, and the price could have gone up. And so let's just be hypothetical and say, okay, it went up from, the $20 million sales price to, 45 million. We wouldn't, in the same token, come and then say, okay, well, it went up because it was improved, but there was this letter of intent. We wouldn't have raised it for that. I'm just worried just from a standpoint of equalization. Yes, we have a letter of intent, but it did in fact not close by 12/31, and a lot of other things could have happened. Yes, it did in fact close at the 20 million. I don't know. I just don't feel comfortable jumping to the 20 million from an April sale. So I don't know, Mr. Penaranda or Mr. Yates, where are you? Mr. Penaranda?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think, there are so many reasons that a sale cannot be closed sometimes. One of the sellers may die, or, there's so many things that can delay a sale. But until it happens, until it closes, then that's the only way, until a deed is recorded. That's pretty much, for me, the reason to be able to go on a sale. And, the appraisal that they indicate is also what's called the lease fee appraisal. And I understand that that's based on the rents that they're receiving, not necessarily on everything, all the income that they can achieve. I think they just, like you said, for purposes of equalization of other properties, I think, the appraiser, the assessor is correct that this should be considered for next year.
Okay, Mr. Yates?
Well, I agree with that. And I did look at the numbers themselves too. And then I the appellant's pro forma with the vacant office space, and there's a lot of it, at $25 a square foot, or the expense level jumping to $12. I think they skewed their numbers a little bit to come toward that 20 million. I'm glad to see they got the or the sales price, but at that level, but for the buyer at least. But it is a sale that will be in next year, and we'll see how the county reacts to it. We'll see where the numbers really come in for 25 too.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, then if that's the case, then I am going to move to confirm the county at 44,306,000 even. I have a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion is second by Mr. Penaranda. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, so it's 3-1 without Mr. Mendez. The county is confirmed at 44,306,000 even. Thank you both.
All right, thank you.
Okay, for keeping Mr. Bynes, and I believe we have Mr. Warren. Okay. All right. The next case on the agenda is RPC, and we have Mr. Hoffman back. There we go. Okay. Next case is RPC 35001-163 at 1425 South Eads. Yesterday, we got a request to withdraw that. I assume there's no objection, Mr. Bynes?
No, no objections.
Okay, I'll move to accept the withdrawal. Do I have a second? Mr. Mendez is a second. All in favor? Aye, opposed. Okay, that has withdrawn. The next case, RPC 1800311 at 1200 North Beach, had a sign reduction on the 10th, so that's removed from the docket. And the following case is the same issue, RPC 2001026 at 535 North Pollard has a sign reduction on the 10th, so that also removes from the docket. The last case then is RPC 0505203A at 2110 North Monroe Street. Mr. Warren, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about this property. Oh, and I'm sorry, we have Ms. Roskin joining us. Okay, Mr. Warren.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to start on page, the BOE memo packet 44 of 129, which is our summary of facts. This is the Cherry Hill Apartments. It's located on North Monroe Street. It's comprised of 3 individual tax RPCs combined into one economic unit. It's those 3 parcels together are currently assessed at $51,870,000. The county is recommending a revision to $49,572,200. The property was originally built in 2019, 93 total units, and it is a garden or low-rise apartment. The county classifies it as a mid-rise and subjects it to its mid-rise assessment guidelines for vacancy and cap rate. Turning now to page, the apartment I&E summary page on page 3, you'll see 4 years of reporting history in columns A, B, C, and E, the county's original assessment column in column D, and the county's revision column in column F. So again, regarding the classification, the county has historically classified this as mid-rise, applied a 4% vacancy rate and a cap rate of 5.8%. The appellant has indicated that based off of the property, and really the county classifies this as a mid-rise due to its having 2 elevators. So instead of classifying it as garden, it has elevators, so they classify it as mid-rise. That change from a 6% in vacancy rate down to a 4% vacancy rate applied for mid-rise, and then a 6.3%, which is the cap rate that would be applied to a garden style, to now a 5.8%, would result in a value in the county test column of $44,687,000. So that's basically $5 million for the elevators. Now, with regard to the gross potential income, we've spoken about this before. This is a stabilized property, and the operations here and the reporting over the last 4 years, as shown on page 3, and the apartment I&E summary reflect that. The county's original assessment analysis estimated gross potential income of $3,865,000. They did reduce that in their test column down to $3,756,720. However, that's still approximately $90,000, $93,000 higher than the property reported in gross potential income in year-end 2024, and it's the highest that's ever been reported as the subject property in the last 4 consecutive years. So, as we've stated before, the county in their test column, what they tend to do is artificially inflate the gross potential income so that they can take their 4% market mid-rise vacancy rate in their analysis. With regard to operating expenses, again, this is a stabilized property, but we have shown a trend where costs, supplies, labor have been on the increase the last several years. And you can see that reflected in 2021. This property reported total operating expenses of $892,000, in 2022 of $1 million, and in 2023 of $1 million. And then most recently, in 2024, operating expenses reported of $1,072,000. So again, the trend is showing that operating expenses are on the rise. The county, in their initial analysis, used an operating expense allowance of $1,018,000. They did reduce that, or they did increase that in their test column to $1,063,000. However, which is basically right in line with the actual operations of the property. But it's not projecting forward. So what the county has indicated in the past is that, well, we're not overshooting gross potential income. We're projecting future income for the property, and that's why it's higher than what has ever been the subject property has ever been capable of generating. But they won't do that same analysis for the operating expenses. They'll take a 3-year average. This is what it's operated at, but we're kind of showing the trend, and we have shown a trend on these specific properties with this specific ownership that costs are on the rise. Total operating expenses have been on the rise for the last several years. So if you're going to project future increases in gross potential income, then you should do the same for the operating expenses as well. The last thing is with regard to just what this property is currently assessed at on a per unit basis. The current assessment of $51,870,000, it's $557,742 a unit. The value we're requesting, target value is $460,000 a unit. There have not been any sales of mid-rise properties or garden style properties, low-rise properties in the county that have transacted over the last 2 years that have been over $500,000 a unit for a mid-rise or a garden style apartment. So with that being said, I think that the current assessment is well above what we believe the past operations of the property would suggest it should be at. And with that, I'll close, and happy to answer any questions. I think Jeremy might want to chime in on something here.
Yeah, the first case we heard, or you heard today, was a relatively brand new apartment that was assessed at $480,000 a unit. We're at $533 a unit. This property sits on 29 outside of 66. So this is outside of the kind of near the Arlington County limits, not in Ballston, not in Roslyn, not in National Landing, not near a metro. It's outside of 66, and it's assessed at $533,000 per unit. So when we talk about equalization, is it fair? Is it equalized? I think it's pretty clear that this value is not. Our value is around $460,000 per unit, which is still on the very high side. That's all. Just wanted to add that.
Okay, thank you both. All right, Ms. Ruskin for the county, please.
Thank you, board. So reviewing this particular property, Cherry Hill Apartments, I want to point out that this property is a 4-story. And yes, we are classifying it as a mid-rise, 4 stories. Garden style is 1 to 3 stories. This is 4 stories. It has 2 elevators. And I also want to add that at the Ditmar website, they state this is a luxury mid-rise apartment community. That's at their own website. So we're definitely sticking with the mid-rise guidelines for this particular property. It fits all the categories. Looking at the rent for column F, okay. Yes, we did project. Actually, we pretty close to, I used pretty close to what the rents were showing in the rent roll analysis. And then as we go down the line, you could take a look and note that they're only experiencing 2.3% for vacancy, but we are using the stabilized vacancy rate of 4%. Okay, so when you get down to the EGI, we're only 22,000. We're only 22,000 over the reported 2024 EGI. And then we go down further down the line to look at the operating expenses. I take a look at those expenses and I go, yeah, they probably increased. And so I used 27%, which we felt is in line with what was being reported. And that's actually also more than what was being reported historically. So we feel that our revision column is, our revision is well supported. And when I go and look at the apartment sales on the commercial guidebook, Yes, the last mid-rise that did sell last year it sold for 380,000 square foot, but that was an old building. That was 1959. It was built in 1959. This one was built in the latter part. We have it as 2017. They're staying as 2019. 1 or 2 years, it's the same, but it's a much newer luxury apartment, and we feel like that's very reasonable. We're looking at the Fitzroy. That sold for 592,000 per unit, which is pretty much in line with the subject. And yes, that's a newer property, but it's not that much older than the subject. It's only older by about roughly 5 years. And yes, that is a high rise. However, it still supports the subject's cap rate and revised assessment of 49,572,200. I'm finished. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions from board members? No? Okay, any final comments, Ms. Ruskin?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Warren, if you'd like to take a minute to wrap up, please.
Ms. Dooley, if I can close, am I allowed to share my screen for a picture?
Yeah, 1 minute. Yes, sir.
So here's the Fitzroy. It's on the corner of Wilson and Clarendon Boulevard. Here's the subject property. The views of this property look into the parking lot of the Safeway. So when we say, well, here's a luxury apartment that's assessed at 533, but it's fair because this one just sold at 580. Again, if you look at the location, this is not a comparable situation. This is the subject that she said, well, we do have a sale. Here's our sale. And again, this is in the heart of Clarendon, Arlington. And this property sits behind a Safeway off 29 across from the Toyota dealership. So I just want to make sure that the board's aware when the assessor points it out. She says, I'm only 20,000 higher on income and I'm only 10,000 short on expenses. Well, the result is she's 32,000 higher than the NOI, and an NOI that's higher than the property has ever achieved. So I just want to point out when she mentions the sales, because this is the subject property. This is the luxury property that she says, well, the owner does call it a mid-rise. What do you want the owner to say? It's a 4-story building that has incredible views of the Safeway parking lot and access to, so
Okay.
I just want to make sure you see that. That's all. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Okay, it's just among the board. Where, folks? Mr. Hoffman?
Every year I look at this one and I'm always taken aback at the per unit cost, and then I remember that it's like there's like 74 3-bedroom, 3-bath units in this building, and the average size is probably double what a market rate unit size is in Arlington. So I actually think it's underassessed, and I'm more kind of in line with the original assessment, but I could go with the reduction. You just got to keep in mind these, and credit to Ditmar, they've really kind of built to the market. Not a lot of developers would have gone in and done giant 3-bedroom, 3-bath kind of family size units with ample parking in Arlington. You know, kind of the trend is to go smaller, but it's performed over time. So I think it's pretty fair to be, you know, right around 51 million.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Penaranda?
No, I agree. I think, you know, I looked at all the numbers from most of the cases that I see on the apartments that I think the rental rates that are used by the assessor are, you know, very reasonable compared to what they advertise to rent each unit. And yeah, the building's advertised as a mid-rise luxury project. So yeah, I think I'm okay. You know, given the benefit that we give to most appellants with the revisions, I'm okay with the revised assessment the way it is.
Okay, Mr. Yates?
Yeah, I looked at it and initially I started to think the county was a little bit high. And looking at the numbers as they progressed over the years and the differences between each one. And at the end of the day, you know, going back through it, the county's NOI is not that much of an increase. I think it's over 24, and I think it's very achievable given the history of this property.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the revision is a gift. You know, so I don't know, Mr. Mendez, where are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty much with everyone else. I mean, the NOI is slightly higher this year and the value overall is down. So I think everything checks out just fine.
All right, somebody want to make a motion then? Mr. Hoffman?
I think Mr. Yates.
Yep.
Will-
Okay. All right. I'll motion to accept the county's reduced number at 49,572,200.
Okay, we got a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Yates? Okay, motion and a second on the table. All in favor? Aye. Oppose? None. So that is unanimous. The county's revised number of 49,572,200 has been confirmed. Thank you. Okay,
Thank you all.
Thank you.
That completes the agenda. Does anybody have any other business? No? Okay, then we will stand adjourned here at 9:56. Reconvene tomorrow, Wednesday, October 15th, 9 a.m. in person for the board members. There are 3 cases on the agenda and one, the second case has asked to withdraw. So we'll only be hearing the 2 cases, I assume. So thank you, everybody. We will see you tomorrow.
Thank you.